According to the 2011 census, India has more than 600,000 villages, which is where 72.2% of the population live. It's over 830 million people in 2011. 370 million more people live in India's towns and cities. And these numbers are from 2011, so they've already gone up to about 900 million living in rural India and 400 million living in urban India. I've found that Rama Bijapurkar, the author of two fantastic books, We Are Like That Only and A Never Before World, is a fantastic help to understanding what this really means. Rama is one of India's leading experts on consumer behaviour and works for many of the leading retail companies in India, including multinationals as well as Indian brands. She also co-runs a think tank called People Research on India's Consumer Economy, whose data we're about to consider. Now, one of the mistakes that people often make about India is that they think rural India must be basically the same in terms of income and levels of development, that the country's wealth, or at least its consumer spending, is concentrated in its richer urban areas. Well, Rama Bijapurkar and her team have carried out extensive surveys, and in addition to the census data and a number of the other government surveys, have compiled some fascinating findings. Given that more than 2/3 of Indians live in rural India, let's start there. It turns out that it's helpful to think of three broad types of rural India. There's developed rural India, emerging rural India, and underdeveloped rural India. Now, 29 million households can be classified as developed rural, 53 million as emerging rural, and 97 million as underdeveloped. 40% of the 29 million households in developed rural India are actually in the top 20% of all the incomes in the country. And a further 17% of the households in emerging India are also in that top 20%, and even 8% of the households in the most underdeveloped parts of India are in the top 20% of income in the country. I really want to make 2 points by sharing this with you. One being to reinforce the fact that generalizations about India just don't work. That we can't simply say that urban Indians are rich and rural Indians are poor, because there are many different income levels within both urban and rural India. The second point is that there is a huge amount of consumption going on in rural India. In fact, 56% of all of India's consumer spending is rural, not urban. It's also important to note that more than half of household income in rural India is non-agricultural. So we're not just talking about farming and agriculture being the driver of the rural economy. Everything else is going on: health, education, construction, and various other income-producing activities. Let's now look at urban India. Well, first things first, when we talk about urban, we're not just talking about the big cities. In fact, according to the 2011 census, urban India comprises about 8,000 towns with a population of 5,000 or more, and they're home to 15% of India's population, or 200 million people. 53 Indian cities have populations greater than 1 million. By comparison, America only has 10. 8 of these cities are the really big metro cities with populations of more than 5 million people. There's only one of those in the US, New York City. And 4 of those cities, Delhi, Mumbai, Calcutta, and most recently Bangalore, have populations, enormous populations, above 10 million. New Delhi, according to the UN, is likely to become the largest city in the world by population, overtaking Tokyo sometime in the 2030s. India's urban population is expected to reach 600 million, or 40% of the whole population, by 2031, according to a UN report. But this growth is not going to happen just in the big metros. It's going to happen in thousands of towns right across the country. All of these cities, towns, and villages will have ever-increasing demand for education, healthcare, entertainment, retail, and of course infrastructure, etc. The government of India, organizations, private companies, they're all going to need to have strategies which appreciate this diversity of development and also find ways to solve the problem of the sheer number of locations involved if they're going to successfully design and deliver the products and the services that people want or need. This challenging landscape is another reason why smartphones are proving to be such an empowering device, as they dramatically open up the connectivity of people in so many of these hard-to-reach and underserved communities, providing direct links to government services, to e-commerce, online education, and so on.